I'd like to call this meeting to order. Will you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening. We have a little bit of change in our standard agenda format, so I'll address this a little bit differently than normal. We have all board members except Clerk Murray. I'd like to appoint Tom Anderson temporary clerk if there are no objections. Okay, seeing none, I'll take that as consent. In improving the agenda this evening, before normally we lead off with the consent agenda, tonight we'll be leading off with our Truth and Taxation meeting, at which point in time we will be going and having public comments specific to Truth and Taxation, and then going into our standard format with an open forum for non-Truth and Taxation hearings, as well as old and new business. So, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? So moved. By Todd. Second?
Second.
By Stacy. All those in favor signify by any changes before we move on. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. So we'll start off with Truth and Taxation. Julie.
Good evening, Chair Pratt, board members, and Dr. Kruger. Tonight we'll be going through our Truth and Taxation hearing, and this, as a reminder to everyone, as we discuss this is for taxes that will be assessed for the 2012 school year, and these monies come back to the district in our budget for 2012 and 13. So later on in the agenda tonight, we will talk about our 2011-12 budget. This is for next year's budget. Kofi?
I was going to interrupt and say, can we put it on the screen for that?
Yeah,
there we go.
Thank you. Tonight's agenda, we'll talk about the tax levy calendar, our basic school funding and where that comes from, our factors contributing to the levy change, our levy certification 2011 K-12, and we'll have some graphical analysis. Our levy calendar, if you remember back in September that we certified, the board certified our proposed levy at the maximum at that time. Knowing that in October that the district would be refunding 2 of the district's bonds, and that does impact our paid 2012 levy. And in November, residents of our school district received their levy notices to the property owners. And in now December meeting, that this is our chance for the public to discuss this, and it's also part of our regular board meeting. And later in the board meeting, the board will certify the final tax levy. Just as a couple of notes, except for new voter approved tax levies, the final levy cannot exceed the preliminary approved in September. And also the certification of the levy is a accumulation of a 5-month process which began the previous July. Actually, it was shortened this year simply because of the state shutdown, so we started late this year. School districts' authority is a little bit different than cities and counties. Our authority is either set by state formula or voter approved. There's very little that the school board can adjust other than those few areas that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But the majority of our levy is set by state formula or voter approved. The basic formula for calculating state aid is the authorized total revenue minus local property taxes equals the remainder, which is state aid. Talk a little bit about our referendum market value analysis. The referendum is the portion of our levy that is for our referendum that has been voter approved. And as you can see, in 2008, that was our highest market value that the district had, and we are down significantly from 2008. Our latest analysis is the 2010, and that's just a little over $4.2 billion. Our adjusted net tax capacity analysis, this also has decreased after about 4 years of leveling off. This decreased slightly again in 2010. And much of that, of course, has to do with property values going down. But the portion of adjusted net tax capacity does affect the rest of our remaining levies, where the referendum was only for that portion of our levy. So they use two different numbers, two different property tax values systems to kind of determine what those numbers are. Factors impacting tax change. There's issues driven by the state level decisions, changes in levies by state formula. The legislature would determine what those are. We have a change, if there's a change in the sales ratio, which doesn't impact our adjusted net tax capacity. The sales ratio is that part of our, when the property values are the same as what they're selling for. So the market value of the property values gets closer to the sales ratio. That does impact our adjusted net tax capacity. And then laws mandating code compliance. So if there was a new law for health and safety that we were required to comply with, that would drive a change in the health and safety formula for that portion of our levy. Issues determined by district voters. Our district voters have approved in the past bond referendums and excess levy referendums. And then we also have local factors. Inflationary pressure on real estate market, abatements, property improvements not previously taxed, change in individual assessed market value, and possible changes in classifications. For example, if it went from a homestead to a rental. A little bit later on, we will talk about the change due to the homestead market value credit. But I just wanted to mention that is a legislative change that did happen for this proposed levy time period. What's included in our school district levy certification? Our levies and bonds from the voter-approved referendums, the levies set by state formula. Those include equity, operating capital, transition, and community service. And then there's the levies authorized by the state based on local need. Excuse me. Reemployment, crime, career and technical, health and safety, facility leases, integration, deferred maintenance, and extended pay. Here's a graphical analysis of our levy limitation analysis. Our voter approved is about 84% of our entire levy certification. So all of the bonds and the voter approved referendums, the excess operating referendums, that equals 84% of our entire levy certification. Only 9% is state determined, and the remaining 7% is local discretion, and those areas would include the health and safety and the OPEB bonding. Factors contributing to levy change. For this levy period, the adjusted net tax capacity has decreased 5.6%. Our referendum market value increased 3.9%. And then we do have a small additional levy for other post-employment benefits. But to offset that increase, we have a reduction in our debt service due to 2010 bond refinancing, and we just recently refinanced 2011, 2 bonds in 2011. And what happens when we refinance those bonds is that those savings are in interest savings. They reduce the payments, which reduce the levy to the taxpayers. We also have a reduction in our debt service excess, and that reduction is due to the fact that the district is required by state law to levy 105% to cover our bonds. And when that extra 5% grows to over that 5%, so what happens is we levy for that extra 5% in case people are not paying their taxes. So we have enough money to pay those bonds every year. If we have taxpayers that are always paying their taxes and on time, we accumulate an excess. And what has happened in this district is we do have an excess over the 5%. And so for this levy certification, that money is going back to the taxpayers. So it's reducing our debt service excess. And then we also have a reduction in community services due to the census change. Back in 2006 and 2007, when the district was growing very fast, we were adjusting our census up every year based on information that we were getting from different sources. And when the actual census came out in 2010, that census was lower than what we estimated. So there's a reduction in community service because all of our levies in community service are based on birth to 5, how many children we have in our district in birth to 5, and an overall census of how many we have in our school district. For the 11 K-12 preliminary levy certification, what I've done is gone through each of the areas, and I'm showing the 2011 final to the 2012 preliminary, and this will be the final certification if it's approved later in the board meeting. And you can see we have very little changes in this area except when it comes to the point of the post-employment benefit. Last year in its letter J, that's $500,000, and this year it's increased to $732,000. And so you can see our levy is going up a little over $200,000 in the general fund. But however, if you look at our community service fund, for our overall final levy for 2011 was $631,000. That's decreasing to $600,000. And then for our debt service, because of the refinancing of those bonds and also for the excess debt service, that amount is going down significantly, almost $1 million. So overall, our entire levy is decreasing a little over $700,000 for the 2011 pay 2012 year. Here's a levy comparison summary. And so you can see the general fund is increasing that $232,000, which is a 2.34% increase. However, our community service is decreasing 5% by $31,000. Our debt service is $964,000 decrease, which is a 7.28% decrease. So overall, our total is a decrease of 2.75%, or $713,000. One area that the legislature changed is the change in the homestead market value credit. And for decades, Minnesota law has included a variety of provisions that seek to limit the property taxes on residential homesteads, and particularly those lower valued homes. So anything less than $413,000 in the case of the homestead market value credit. The homestead market value credit only affected property taxes that were based on net tax capacity. It's not impacting on operating referendums, equity, or transition levies. And after the county calculated the initial tax bill for each property, they reduced the tax bill for most residential homesteads by applying the state-paid homestead market value credit. The maximum credit was $304 for a home with a market value of $76,000, and it declines gradually until it reaches zero for homes that are valued at $413,800 or higher. The new law that went into effect eliminates this homestead credit beginning with taxes payable in 2012, and in its place is an exclusion which is similar to the formula, but it does not offset this large of a homestead market value credit. What it means to the taxpayers that the shift will cause reductions in all measures of tax capacity statewide. The Department of Revenue calculated a statewide reduction of 4.73%. However, for Prior Lake, it was closer to 1.7%. And it's essentially a shift in taxes from state sources to the local property taxes. The new exclusion is calculated formula, and so you can see the formula here. For homes valued up to $76,000, they receive 40% of the value. Above $76,000, it's a formula of $30,400 minus 9% of the valuation over $76,000. So it's a complicated formula which they apply to this. And the only specific information is to determine for property owners is to look at their own individual tax statement. Here is kind of a spreadsheet of an analysis of how it may look. If you can see, the old law shows the an estimated market value of $200,000. And by applying the homestead market value credit, they actually end up in step 5 with a net tax of $1,924. And applying the new law, their estimated market value may be $200,000. And then when they apply the new formula, they end up with a tax of a little over $2,000 or $2,005. So instead of the state taking on some of those, that tax burden, it went back to the property owner. And so even though our district did decrease its overall levy by almost 2%, some of our taxpayers may not see that decrease because of this change in homestead market value credit. Any questions concerning this?
Any questions from the board? Would now be appropriate for public questions and comment? Okay. I'll invite anyone who has a question about truth in taxation to come up to the microphone. Just state your name and city of residence, and we'll be happy to listen.
Jerry Michaels, resident of Credit River Township. I obviously seem to represent a very silent majority, but I'm more or less here just to give my observations on concerns that I have, so forth, and quite a few people that I come in contact with. Could I first ask, what is the approximate cost per student for teaching in Prior Lake School?
Are you asking what are we given per student? Or are you asking what are we spending per student?
What are you spending per student?
We spend about $9,000 per student.
And that does not include capital equipment.
That does include capital. All of our operating costs are included.
Includes buildings and everything?
Not buildings.
Okay. So it's basic, for the most part, it is the cost of teaching and supplies and overhead of administration.
And food service and community education.
Okay. And what's the average class size?
Would depend on grade. Our lowest class
There
size
is no average class size throughout the system?
Go.
At the very primary level, we try to keep it as low as possible. We staffed our kindergartens beginning at 17-1, but that, in fact, is not the common case. It's more closer to 20. In the primary grades, we try to keep it in that low 20s. And then as they get to the 4th and 5th grade, it goes up a little bit to the 25. At the middle school and at the high school, our class sizes are over right now what we would like for them to be. We've brought them down a little bit with some additional staffing that the board just adopted a few weeks ago. And hopefully that will continue to be a focus to get those class sizes lower. But the class size ranges between 32 and 36 with some outliers of being closer to 40 at the secondary level.
So if I said a class size average is around 25, that wouldn't be too far off, is that right?
I think you would be off in the high school. The high school, it's considered.
Would be much higher.
Yeah.
But I mean across the spectrum from kindergarten on up.
So
I would say
Close to 28.
Yeah, I would say high 20s.
Well, I was just trying to get an idea of where it stood, but that effectively that's saying that the cost for teaching a student per teacher is in the neighborhood of 140, maybe 160, 70,000 dollars. Well, probably a little bit higher than that even, but it's about 170, 80,000 dollars per student. Per class, pardon me, per class.
I'm not sure how you're getting. Tell us how you're.
Well,
what you're just multiplying.
You said
Yeah.
7,000, times 20. you're up to 140.
140.
I'm just giving ballpark
Okay,
numbers, that's
gotcha.
all. And we know that the teachers aren't making, each teacher is not making an income of 180,000. And if we cut that in half, as public service in this country goes, the public employees are basically at the top of the food chain nowadays. Private industry is quite a bit lower. And we would be saying that effectively the salaries, if you roll in the administrators and everybody into that number one way or another, you come up with a rather large number of the salaries and the benefits to pay another teacher who has retired, because your benefits are fairly generous by comparison to the private sector. And that is primarily the result of problems that existed over the years for the school boards, who have negotiated agreements with like teachers unions or specific employees. And the school board, they call it negotiation when they're dealing with the teachers union, but the teachers union basically hires you folks that are on the board, because you command a major portion of the votes from the teachers. That's just a fact of life. And so you have the curious situation where on one hand you've got the people who voted you into office are effectively negotiating with the boss that they hired. And also you are at a disadvantage because of the infinite wisdom of some of our politicians in the past have dictated that the school boards must agree in negotiations by a certain date. And if you go beyond that, you are penalized considerably for exceeding that date. And to me, that's not negotiation. That's almost being captivated completely by the specific union or the person negotiating. The other method, of course, is by comparative salaries for, be it superintendents, executives, and so forth. Just what my concern or observation is, this country is in bad shape right now. Economically, things are really bad. And as we go ahead, it almost is as if we're in the twilight zone of the existence of the American Republic. And one of these days, I don't know when or how, but with the trajectory we are currently engaged in, it's not going to take too long, and this whole system is going to collapse. And then no one is going to have anything. And that's why, I would implore that the teachers, unions, take this into consideration. You people are under a certain amount of restrictions that limit how much influence you can really have on these factors. And it's just, as I see us propelling as a nation in this economic morass that we're headed for, it really concerns me. And I don't know what can be done about it. I'm not dictating any course of action. I'm just saying that for many of us, we are concerned. We have limited resources. 50% of the people in this country don't pay taxes other than, say, cigarettes and their sales tax at the grocery store. So it's left to the income of the people on the street who are in private industry. And there's a real limit to it. Right now, we're effectively, our country is spending at the rate of about 100% of GDP for everything that we have. If you roll everything up in there. We've got a debt that's publicly acknowledged to be $17 trillion, but it's actually an obligation that's well over $100 trillion. So like I say, I don't know what can be done, but we are concerned. And I just don't know what you can do about it other than maybe join us and try. I don't know. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you. It's a privilege to be able to speak to this illustrious group. My name is Lloyd Urbaugh. I live in Prior Levy. I am a recent resident of Prior Lake, moved here 2 years ago, came from the friendly jurisdiction of Golden Valley. So it's a pleasure to have relocated and to be able to address this group. The ability to read and to write, to analyze data, to present information in a clear and logical way is important. The ability to build strong relationships and to feel important, or at least worthwhile, is useful. To understand the complexities of people from halfway around the world whose religious faith and political beliefs are jarringly out of sync with our own views is more challenging. We rely on family, friends, schools, the wisdom of strangers, and luck to nurture 3 to 8 pound babies into the world of today. We delight in children, adolescents, adults, and seniors who explore the world, embrace the possibility, and live joyful and enthusiastic lives. We also can be content with less. Schools that embrace music, logic, sports, cooking, financial and family planning, all of the R's, are a start. Individuals who understand how value systems are constructed and how countries and peoples come to love or hate each other are beginning to have a clue. Being a teacher or a student has never been more challenging. Being a parent and a member of the village of supporters is equally so. Getting everyone in the community to agree on what is important has never been accomplished. Test taking and feedback are useful. A supportive and demanding environment with high standards for the parents, children, educators, and administrators is a good beginning. Education starts at the top, the bottom, and everywhere else. It needs to last a lifetime and often flickers out too early. Let's provide the finances, the community support to assure that every child and every family survives, thrives, and excels. I am not naive about the place of the various professional associations and labor unions involved. I've had the opportunity to hire and to fire teachers. Some are amazing, and some are not. But if you ask them individually, they are remarkably good at identifying those teachers and support people who should be coached out of the field or terminated. We have the skills to develop great teachers, students, administrators, and adults. Let's pull together and make it happen. And now just a few questions. The previous speaker indicated or was going along the lines of a general cost per student. Do the students that you have include people who may have some disadvantage, disability, other learning issues in most classrooms? I'm guessing that the challenges are not tracked, they are mainstreamed in your school. And are there support people, professionally trained staff who deal with the diversity and the range of skills you have? A class of 36, how many students might there be who could, in an interesting manner, take the class off course, off track, require special needs or intervention?
Are you asking a question?
Yes.
I guess my question would be is, as we talk about tax levy and tax assessment,
Sure.
I appreciate your question, but I'm trying to figure out how it fits into the context of the topic at hand. I mean, we can talk about how we pull our classrooms together, and we've got our director of curriculum and our superintendent that can talk to that. But this is really about, at least this portion of the meeting is really about the tax levy and the property tax statements that will be effective next year. And so I'm struggling to draw a connection between the two right now.
Well, I guess I'm seeing a pretty straight linkage between the amount of money available and the quality of the program that we provide. Am I?
And we have our final budget coming up, which I think will address some of Mr. Michael's questions as well.
Okay.
Later in the evening. We just, last meeting, talked about our test scores and evaluation of those test scores, where we're at in the growth of that, and I would say we are doing fairly well. Certainly not to the level, certainly not off track of where where we're expected to be versus today's regulations. But I'll let the superintendent talk to that.
Well, in contrast to the previous speaker, let me just say my impression, I'm new to the area, don't know everyone personally, don't know everyone's situation. I view the city of Prior Lake to be blessed with incredible wealth, with people who have positive ambition, hopefully people who can join and support in making the school district one of the finest in the state. And I certainly would hope that your taxation and any other decisions that you make would support that view. Thank you.
Thank you. And please, sir, I hope I wasn't trying to be argumentative in any way. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward in the agenda to the consent agenda. On tonight's consent agenda, is there something else I need to do for truth and taxation? Okay. We have the check wire disbursement summary, approval of the school board minutes from November 14th and 28th, donations of $500 from the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community for Hidden Oaks Middle School's community giving tree, and a large saltwater aquarium and associated filters and pumps from Bruce Reed for the Prior Lake High School with a value of $600. We also have resignations, terminations, and non-renewals as presented. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? By Lee, second.
Seconded.
By Rich. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Next, we have Laker Showcase in Jeffers Pond.
And we'll welcome Dr. Caroline Warner, the principal at Jeffers Pond. Kate Tingley is coming up, media specialist, and I believe 2 students are coming with them. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting us here, and we're very excited to share a little bit about Jeffers Pond and something that's unique for us. What we do at Jeffers Pond, and I have some people behind me that will share a little bit as well. We create a news program called Jeffers Pond News, or JP News, something that our 4th and 5th graders get a chance to be a part of and certainly look forward to. As I am new to the school, talking with students in the school, they certainly have a feel for what JP News is and are excited to be able to experience that when they get to be that age. We have decided this year to start sharing our JP News as part of our all-school meeting. So those students who are part of that production get a chance to be able to go through what it's like to put a news broadcast together, certainly work on pieces that help build their confidence. They plan the broadcast, and then they work on together being able to edit that and put that together. And I know also just to give a very good thank you to Miss Tingley, who does a fantastic job of working with those students and helping them edit, and also spending a lot of time editing herself, and is more than welcome, more than welcoming to have people come view what that looks like. And I'm going to have her be able to explain a little bit more of behind the scenes. But one thing we wanted to do is to be able to show you what that was, and then to tell you a little bit about our JP News. So I am going to actually introduce, I have two students that are with us, two fifth graders, Rachel and Natalie, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves and then share a little bit about how that impacts their life and what we learned from JP News. And then we will show a little clip of our December edition of JP News, as well as hear from the same class.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Zimmer. I am a fifth grader at Jeffers Pond. I wanted to be a part of JP News because I thought it would be fun to show the fifth grade, to show the whole school about the important events at Jeffers Pond. I've learned that it takes a lot of hard work trying to remember your lines. For being a part of JP News. My favorite part of being JP News, I would say, is just working with everybody. I thought it was fun working with the whole crew, and I just thought it was a really cool opportunity, so I wanted to take it, and so then I wanted to show it to the whole school.
My name is Natalie Becker, and I'm in fifth grade. My favorite experiences of JP News are being able to work in front of the camera and learning all about the things that need to happen to put a news show on the air. It was really an honor to get chosen to do JP News. I wanted to do JP News because I had done several shows on stage, but I had never had a chance to really work in front of a camera. I also really wanted to do JP News because the students who did it last year made it look so fun and interesting. I was also very curious about what it took to do a TV news show. Doing JP News, I learned that it takes a big group of people working together to put on a show like this. I also learned that performing in front of a camera with a microphone is very different than performing on stage. It felt great to work on JP News and knowing that it would be broadcast to the entire school.
Well, we're very fortunate at Jeffers Pond to have a production room and a control room, along with a green screen that you will see later tonight in the behind-the-scenes production. And last year I started with the fifth graders once a month. Thought, why not get them together to help teach the kids what's going on at Jeffers Pond. And then I expanded it a little bit into a community ed class last year. And we did another community ed class. It was a success, and I already have parents asking me, when are you going to teach the next community ed class? Because I think it gives the kids a real sense of confidence when they see what they have produced, what they've worked toward, and then be able to see all that work up on the big screen. So each of you did a great job. Thank you. And this is a behind-the-scenes look. You'll see the lighting and the green screen, and then also our December edition of JP News this month. Thank you.
It's really hard to think up a script. My favorite part in JP News is being the person who talks.
There isn't just two people here talking to you and one person videotaping. You need the producer, you need a scriptwriter, and you need many others that make this come together.
There's also people who wear headsets to communicate with the main director. I never realized how important it was until I joined it. The other thing I learned, that there's this big green curtain behind me, because it's so important. You want to be in Paris, then you couldn't really be in Paris, so you use the green screen, and you can make it look like you're in Paris, but you're not actually in Paris. My favorite part about JP News was getting involved. I enjoyed having to meet the cast and see what really goes on behind the scenes. Good morning, I'm Zoe. And I'm Ethan. Welcome to the December edition of JP News. Congratulations to our Prior Lake High School football team to making it to the Metrodome. Way to go, Lakers. The PLHS Junior Optimist Club will be sponsoring a Toys for Tots drive at Jeffers Pond in December. Bring your unwrapped toys to Jeffers Pond and drop those toys in each grade level area. Now let's go to Sydney and Callie, who are on location with some helpful safety tips to remember this winter. Hi, we're here to help remind you to be safe this winter. That's right, Sydney. We want everyone to come to school prepared for the winter weather. Please remember to bring your hats, gloves with you each day. I'll be sure to remember my snow gear each day, just in case we get more. Now back to you, Zoe and Ethan. Some great advice. Thanks, Sydney and Callie. Now let's go to Joe and Theo for a new juice pouch tip.
Oh, do you know there's a place to put our juice pouches?
Yes, right in this blue container right beside the food containers. Also, no juice boxes, no straws, empty any extra juice, and flattened juice pouch. This has been Ethan and Zoe for JP News. Thanks for watching and have a great day and enjoy your winter break.
To see a little bit of what it is that we get an opportunity to share, and it certainly, we just had our December all-school meeting, and the excitement when certainly people who are on JP News get to see themselves, but also to see our younger students be able to see that as an opportunity, and like Rachel had spoken about, something to look forward to when they get to that age, and to see the confidence that they have. The students certainly have talked with me about things and have even come up to either myself or Ms. Tingley asking, this is a great thing, could we put this on JP News? Prior edition had something about crushing our milk cartons, so certainly in support of our waste dispersal program. You saw we're recycling our pouches, so using that certainly to connect with things that are in the school, reminder of what to wear outside at recess. But it's a fantastic way, and I certainly am excited for that opportunity, and I know that certainly thankful for Ms. Tingley and all the students who do a fantastic job to make such a great production. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
Do the kids write their own script and everything?
They do.
Wow.
Yep, certainly with some guidance of, things that are there, but like I said, with different ideas. The one with the milk crushing, I know approached both Miss Tingley and I and said, we have, she has this great idea because she's seeing all of her friends not crushing milk. So she wanted to help us remember to do that.
How long does it take to put together an edition of JP News? And this was an edited version. I'm wondering how long the real version is.
We usually spend maybe 30 minutes to an hour taping, and the longest part is the editing. So the behind the scenes editing, maybe 2 to 3 hours of editing. It depends. The better I get, the faster I get.
And for the students, are you guys like celebrities to the first and second graders? Yeah, please.
What's different about your community education class and JP News during the school day?
Sure. Well, the JP News, I try to select 5th graders, so that's one of the highlights of being a 5th grader. And for the community ed class, I open it up to 4th and 5th graders. And I tell them we have a little bit more time to work with them and work with the final product. So they do everything from the script writing, the floor director, the production director. They get it to dabble with editing, with Movie Maker, and the cinematographer, and then of course the anchors. And so I tell them at the end of the community ed class, you'll have done each one of the different jobs that goes into making a video production. And with the JP News, I try to get the 5th graders when I can to do it during the school day.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all very much. That was very interesting.
Thank you. Really cool.
Okay, next on the agenda is our open forum. This is the point in time in our agenda where if anyone wants to speak on an item that's not being addressed this evening, they have that opportunity. Is there anybody that would like to talk about an item not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to personnel. Matt.
All right. Good evening. First, I would like to recommend the following candidates for employment and seeking board approval.
Do I have a motion to approve the candidates as presented? By Tom. Second?
I will second
By
it.
Rich. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. And
next, I present the following deeds of absence and am seeking board approval.
or do I have a motion on leave of absence as presented?
So moved.
By Todd. Second?
Second.
By Stacy. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. And finally, you have a job description?
That's correct, and this is a job description for the position of the Health and Safety Compliance Monitor, which was a new position board approved at our previous meeting. And as I said, this is a completely new job description.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the job description for Health and Safety Compliance Monitor? By Stacy. Second? By Lee. Any questions?
If I could,
Yes, Rich.
refresh for my memory again. This is a part-time position, correct?
That's correct. This is a very part-time position. It's envisioned to be about 20 hours per month.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. I'm sorry, did you have? Okay. We have no old business, and so we'll move on to new business. Kids company rates. Kelly Vossen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Vossen. I'm the new Kids Company Coordinator as of July. I'm thrilled to be here. Looking at next year's rates, you can find them on page 37 and 38, I think, of your packets. We are proposing not to raise rates for the 2012-2013 school year. We're a self-sustaining program. We're supported and we operate on parent fees. We looked at our rates. We're very competitive with surrounding communities. We have strong enrollment and we continue to grow. We're currently serving 724 children, which is up about 30 children from last year at this time. And we have a pretty healthy fund balance, so we feel that we don't want to ask parents to pay more when it's not necessary.
Okay. Do you have a motion to approve the Kids Company fees for 2012-13?
So moved.
By Stacy. Second.
Second.
By Todd. Any questions? Yes.
I'd just like to say Kelly's done just a terrific job in her first several months here already, acknowledging this great program that we have for our before and after care, and also beginning to grow it in new and different ways. So welcome, and we're glad to have you, and know that the rates are going to stay the same. Will be a wonderful news to our families that it's out this early. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Next, we have adoption of the 2011-2012 levy certification.
Earlier this evening, you heard the Truth in Taxation hearing, and it's my recommendation that the board approve the final levy certification. There is no change from the preliminary levy that you certified in September.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the levy certification as presented this evening?
So moved.
By Stacy. Second?
Second.
By Lee. Any questions, comments? I'll say, despite all of the financial concerns we've had over the last decade and coming out of $1 million deficit, I'm proud that we can reduce our levy and reduce our levy in real terms through strong financial management and expense management both. So, a nearly 3% decrease is I think, appropriate given where our housing market and is today. So, anything else? Okay. Seeing none, no other questions or comments. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. And next we have the final 2011-2012 budget.
Good evening once again. Tonight you're going to hear quite a bit from me. I'd like to talk a little bit about the final budget for the current year. And so just as another reminder, the levy certification is complete and that's for next year. And now we're back to talking about the current year. So just to talk a little bit about our budget process that we've gone through for this year. The 2011-12 budget is the second year of a 2-year budget process. The board approved the 6-period day for 11-12 in August of 2010. There were several meetings by the admin and staff to discuss that staffing for the 6-period day scheduling. And we also, we had reductions in that area for the 6-period day scheduling. And we also had reductions in staffing at the elementary level due to declining enrollment at the elementary. Here's a chart that kind of shows our enrollment history. And it's a projection, last year, actuals, and then where we're at this year and where we're going forward for the next several years. If you can see that we are increasing for this year to 7,050 students. We're a little bit higher than that right now, but those numbers that we have include our PSEO students. And I'm projecting these are the numbers that we'll have at the end of the year. And so we're at budgeting for 7,050, which is about a little over 40 students more than we budgeted for at the beginning of the year when you approved the preliminary levy in June. As you can see, our enrollment is projected to go down. We're graduating 530 students, 528. And next year, we're only projecting to only see about 430 kindergarten students coming in. So that's a 100 student swing between those kids graduating and the kids coming in. Now we did get quite a few more students this year than we had projected, and we're hoping for the same for next year. But based on just historical, we are going to budget conservatively for our enrollment for the future. I'm just looking a little bit at enrollment trends. The top line is our grades 1 through 5. Our enrollment is definitely declining at that level. The very bottom line is kindergarten level, which also is declining. The number that is most interesting is our high school, which continues to increase. That's that gray line at the top. And our middle level, 6 through 8, is pretty steady at this point. It's slightly declining. Moving to talk a little bit about our revenue sources. The district receives $51.74 per pupil unit for this year in state aid. That's a $50 increase from our preliminary budget. The voters approved an additional operating referendum of $1,051 per pupil unit. We received some federal sources in special education and title programs and other local revenues and state aids and levies. Our projected end-of-year enrollment is based on October 1 pupil counts, which you saw a few slides earlier, so we're up a little over 40 ADM, average daily membership. The increase of $50 to our basic formula. We had a small increase in our athletic fee structure, and we do want to talk a little bit about the 60-40 shift for cash flow. Last year, we received 70% of our revenue in the current year and 30% the following year. And now for 2011-12, we only received 60% of our revenue with 40% to become later. And so for cash flow purposes, we're down about 10%. We do not see any increase in the interest revenue, but we do, however, have an increase to the ADSIS grant to match our allocation of about $350,000. Here's a graph to show what our general fund revenue is by source. The yellow is state sources, so about 77% of our revenue comes from state sources. So when we go through things like the state shutdown, that really does affect our budgets and our cash flow because the majority of our revenue comes from the states. Property taxes are 19%, federal sources are 3%, and other local revenues are 1%. Our expenditure budget assumptions, that all of our categorical expenditures are based on any revenue that we receive. They usually try to match revenues and expenditures for any categorical funding we receive. Special education is, we're anticipated it's only funded at 88%, so we only show those revenues and expenditures at that level. And same with our special ed excess, it's only funded at 66%. And then one other thing that we have this year is the loss of federal stimulus dollars. Last year we received a little over $1 million, or a little under $1 million. We have about $350,000 this year in federal jobs bill money. So it's less. That is one-time money that we receive. Changes from the preliminary budget. We did update our salary and benefits based on all of our staffing that we have on right now and the usage of the benefits. And we updated all of our information based on the contractual obligations. We did decrease our utility costs, and the main reason we were able to do that is due to the energy efficiency and because of the programs that we have in the district. And we had to increase our expenditures for the ADSIS grant because of the revenue we were receiving for that. So our revenues of $350 equal our expenditures of $350 for the ADSIS grant. So just as a summary, I wanted to put it on one page. We have 43 additional students. Our ADSIS grant increased from $98,000 to $350,000. And the increase in the gen ed revenue of $50. That's where the main area of the increases in our revenue come from for this year of our final budget versus our preliminary budget. For expenditures, we updated our salaries. We have carryover from our sites from the 11-12 school year for sites, staff development, and capital and deferred maintenance. So we adjust our budgets based on that carryover from last year. We updated our targeted services program to make sure that we were, that this is only the second year of that program for targeted services, and so that continues to change and grow. So we did update that program. Increase in capital expenditures. The board earlier this year approved us to update to our email to Microsoft Outlook. Those costs came out of our capital budget. Our capital expenditures, and so we did increase that budget. I talked about the ADSIS grant. We did have some additional staffing approved at the November board meeting, and then again the loss of the federal stimulus funding. We are no longer able to use some of those expenditures for that federal stimulus, and so those expenditures now need to come out of the general fund. So our expenditures by object code, what we call an object code, but 60% are salaries, and another 23% of our overall budget is benefits. 11% is purchase services, 4% is instructional supplies, 2% is capital expenditures, and then a little under 1% are all our other expenditures. And this graph shows where our money is going. It's pretty evident that the majority of our expenditures are going for regular instruction. That's the biggest portion of our budget. Special education is the next highest. You can see I'm showing 5 years of information here, but you can see that we did decrease our expenditures for regular instruction due to some of those declines due to 6th grade day. Special revenue funds include both our food service and community service funds. It's almost exact opposite of where we get our revenue for these two programs. The majority of our revenue is from local sources, and simply because of the programs from community ed are fee-based, and also for food service, of course, it's our lunch counts from students. And then about 8% is property taxes, federal sources is 7%, and state sources is 7%. For expenditures for those two, food service and community ed, 49% are salaries with 14% as benefits. Purchase services is 10%, but you can see our supply budget is a pretty big portion of that, 26%, and that's mainly because of our food costs for our food service program. Capital is 1%, and then all other expenditures again are less than 1%. Moving on to the debt service fund. Our debt service fund is simply the money that comes from bonds voted on by district taxpayers for building construction, deferred maintenance, and technology. We currently have 7 bonds, but you'll see that that will decline to 6 bonds next year because of the refinancing of 2 bonds this year. The district must levy 1.05% of the principal and interest payments for the year to make sure that we're paying for the, we have the money to pay for the entire principal and interest required for that year. And I talked a little bit that we have already refinanced 2 bonds this year to lower interest rates. Here's a schedule of our long-term debt. You can see the 7 bonds and the total principal and interest out there for from now until 2026. I want to talk a little bit about our internal service fund. We currently utilize this fund for 2 liabilities. We are funding HRA accounts. In the past, contractually, the board no longer funds a severance payment, and now that money is going into HRA accounts in which our employees must need to be vested for 20 years in order to receive those dollars. And we also have a health insurance, self-insured health insurance account that we just implemented in 2011 and 12, and we account for those funds in this internal service fund. Fund 21 is our revocable trust. This is new in 2010-11, and so I want to review it for this year. This trust was established last year to offset the OPEB liability, and it will continue to increase in revenue as the assets need to equal eventually the liability. And that's something the district over the long term is committed to funding that liability. And each year the district has the ability to levy for this. And as you can see here is the 11-12 budget for all funds. We are improving slightly our general fund balance. However, our unassigned operating, the board has a fund balance policy of 5 to 8%, and this is just still slightly under 5%. And as the board as we continue to work towards that 5%, we'll continue to try to improve that fund balance. Our food service is staying very steady. However, our community education is decreasing in our fund balance for 2011-12. That is a very purposeful decline in that fund balance, particularly in 2 areas, early childhood, family ed, and school readiness, as we cannot have more than 25% of our fund balance, higher than 25% fund balance in those areas. Our building fund is we're slowly depleting that fund. That's from bonds that were approved prior, and we have about $425,000 left there. Our debt service is going up for this year, but you know that that excess will be given back to the taxpayers for the 12-13 tax year. And then the internal service fund and revocable trust fund, we are funding that via levy. The revocable trust fund is being funded partially from a levy for this year. Any questions about budget? We I have given you a packet electronically, and some board members have a big packet that has been printed out. And so if anytime you have questions about that, please let me know.
Are there any questions?
I have brought this to the Finance Committee. We've had discussions on this, and they have preliminary brought it forward as it's been presented tonight.
1 second, Julie. Okay. What I'd like to do is, we've had some discussion during Truth and Taxation about items that I think were maybe somewhat covered or addressed in this, and I'd ask if there's anybody in the audience with questions pertaining the 2011-2012 budget at this time. We'll reserve 5 minutes for questions. Okay. Seeing none, certainly anybody can contact the superintendent or any board member with questions going forward. And Julie, we do post this information on our website as well, correct?
This information, all of the information that's presented tonight will be on our website. Our levy certification will be on the website, and also all of the printed material that you have will be on our website electronically for anybody to review. It does go into quite the detail of our budget.
So I'll just ask for the board, any additional questions or comments? I think this is a good start. We, came pretty close with our preliminary budget. As always, we have to get through the audit, our financial audit of year end before we finalize our budget. So it's kind of odd that we do the final budget 4 months into the school year. But, that's kind of where we're at.
It's also difficult for us in June, especially this last year, not knowing what the state legislature was going to do, and we had the state shut down in the meantime. So many of the items on here were new simply because of the changes in the legislative session.
Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2012 or the 2011-2012 budget.
So moved.
By Stacy, second.
I will second it.
By Rich. I'll offer one more time any questions or comments. Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? I'm sorry, Jim. Oh, I forget to look that way sometimes. Thank you very much.
I'm next too. So.
Oh, you're next too?
I
haven't.
She's on a roll.
Okay. Next is transportation contract. Yes, you are.
Over the last couple months, we've been having Jim, Delmo, and myself have been meeting with the Prior Lake School Bus Association to talk about the updated the next year agreement. We have had discussions with the Transportation Committee as well, and they've given us the ability to move forward and work with them. It was a very amicable and pleasant experience. This is my first year working with them, and it did go very smoothly. We had 4 changes in the agreement at your place. There should be a sheet that shows those changes. First of all is an insurance on page 2 of the agreement. It increases the maximum liability of the insurance from $5 million to $6 million in 2012-13, and then again to $7 million in 2013 and 14. And that cost will be borne by the school bus association. One of the things that the district and the bus association are looking at is GPS. And so we added some language to the agreement stating that we would be looking at investigating and purchasing GPS during the life of this agreement, which starts in July 1 of 2012. And so you'll see that information on your sheet that we are investigating that and looking forward to doing that. However, we haven't come to any conclusions at this time as to what system we would use. only that it needs to be compatible with the current software system that we own. The third item is the minimum number of buses that are required for year one of this agreement, reduced from 40 to 36. We have been reducing the number of buses every year for the last agreement. Maybe even we missed 1 year. We had 40. For the current year, we have 37 buses, but for next year, we anticipate that we'll have 36. And then in the financial piece of the agreement, it does increase our transportation costs by 4.1% in the first year, with no additional increases the remaining 3 years of the agreement. Also, I'd like to remind you that the Prior Lake School Bus Association received an increase in year 2 of their last agreement, but did not receive any increases for the past 2 years. And so they've gone for 3 years with the same revenue source. And now we're giving them another lump sum, of which will stay the same for 4 years. And so it's a 4.1% increase, which is about $148,000 for the first year of the agreement. Any questions? Those are the only changes that we've done.
For the GPS system,
Yes.
when that's installed, the school district retains ownership of the whole system?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Because we own the software that it is compatible with, and the district would like to have the ownership of that software as well.
Julie, at Finance, you talked about some of the reasons why we want GPS. Can you talk to that very briefly?
We do believe that GPS will help us with to create better routing systems for our school district. Some of the things that we have a lot of questions on, like when we get maybe a complaint that the bus didn't stop or a bus is speeding, the district can know right away how long a bus was stopped at a bus stop or a stop sign or a railroad crossing. They also can tell at all times what the speed is of the vehicle. So if we have complaints that a vehicle is speeding, we would know immediately. We may have parents saying that the bus comes at different times every day, and for 365 days prior to, we can find out for a whole year of information to say the bus stopped at this bus stop at 7:30 every day, or it stopped at 7:29 and 30 seconds was the earliest it was ever at this bus stop, and the latest it was ever, and it left, the latest it ever left was 7:30 and 30 seconds. So we know within that time frame exactly when that bus was at a bus stop. So it will help us to track that. We have 36 buses, as you know, plus additional buses for activities and spare buses that we would want to have the GPS implemented. But we're not sure right now if it would be a phased-in implementation or we try to get out the GPS in all buses immediately. In addition to our buses, we also have special education vans that we use, and we'll have ongoing discussions on how to implement in the vans in the future.
Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, did we get a motion in a second? Okay. I'll take a motion to approve the bus contract as presented.
So moved.
By Lee, second by Tom. Any other, I'll offer it up again, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Are you up again?
Yes, I am.
How could we?
We're going to take one more. And then
Commerce Bank Resolution and Agreement.
I brought this to the Finance Committee a month or so ago to talk about the Commerce Bank. And the Commerce Bank, what it allows the district to do is to internally run some of our bills to the Visa network system. And by doing that, Commerce Bank is willing to share its fees with us through running those bills to the Visa network system. And we save some additional dollars by doing that. This is a totally internal run through our office. Our employees or anybody making purchases would not know that this is really happening. This would simply happen in our office. But what happens right now is we do things through a P card, a purchase card, and we do get a small rebate on this, but this definitely would increase the rebate that we would receive by running those bills through Commerce Bank. So what happens is that what we'd like to propose is that we add Commerce Bank as an option for us to pay our bills through the Visa network system, and also continue using our purchase cards for those purchases for our teachers and our staff to do those things that they need to do at the various businesses. But utilize the Visa network system for the larger payments that we make every month and to get a bigger rebate. So it would bring more revenue into the district. That's the final result of this resolution, is that I'm hoping to see somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 of additional revenue that we could possibly bring back to the district.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the Commerce Bank agreement?
So moved.
By Stacy, second. Second. By Todd. Any questions or discussion? Tom?
Is this used by other districts or other municipalities and things?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I used it in my prior district that I came from, and we were able to see quite a bit of revenue coming back.
Julie, did you say you looked at if other banks or local people carried this type of?
There isn't anything exactly like this where they do the revenue share. You don't see as high of a revenue share. Some of them actually have things like they replace, like your accounts payable department. You send all your bills to them, but then it's a fee to do that, and it's a much higher cost. Whereas this retains our staff. They have the knowledge of our bills and can actually, I think it's a better system for our district to be able to do this.
Do you have an idea, a guesstimate of what you're thinking the value, the benefit would be, like a first year? Or?
Well, we'll only implement it for half a year this year, so I'm thinking maybe $35,000, but a full year could be around $70,000. Depending on, really on what we are paying. If we have any big projects that they accept the Visa, if they'll accept the payment through the Visa system, that could be a big rebate for us.
But things like curriculum.
Curriculum or any building projects they may have, or,
They take Visa, for building projects?
A lot of our vendors take it now. They want, especially in this economy, it's amazing that they want that revenue right away for their cash flow. So they're willing to do that.
Yes.
And also for technology expenses, we could certainly use this as a resource to do that.
And a lot of our Excel Energy and those our normal monthly bills, they'll accept the Visa network system, the bills to the Visa network system also too. So we can utilize that more than we've been able to just through the purchase card system.
Are you confident we have enough control systems in place to monitor that?
Actually, I like the controls with this much better than the purchase card system.
What are some of the benefits?
Well, it integrates currently with our software, our finance software that we have, and so when we make payments, it looks exactly the same as we've made them with a check, except it just shows it's through a wire. It has its own line item, it has everything exactly the same as a check. Whereas with the purchase card system, we only see that something was purchased through the purchase card system, and we need to go to that system to look and see the details.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I would just say, this is with no additional staff added.
No additional staffing, no additional cost to the district. It should just simply be a savings or a revenue generation of funds.
Okay, and just a statement that I'll be abstaining due to potential conflict of interest. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I abstain. That motion carries 5-0-1. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, we need a roll call vote on that.
Oh, we do? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Thank you, Martha. Todd? Aye. Rich?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Eric abstains. Stacy?
Aye.
And Tom?
Aye.
Thank you.
I abstain.
What? Oh, okay. Oh, and you- Okay, so Julie, all right, you get to talk about kindergarten fees.
I guess you have me for one more.
Julie show.
I see Deb Williams is not available at this time. And so just to talk a little bit about our tuition for our extended day kindergarten. I talked earlier in the finance committee meeting about this. We are much lower than the surrounding districts, as you can see by the information that you received in your packet. For 2012, however, we are proposing a tuition cost of $28.35 per year, or $315 per month for 9 months. And that's an increase from $26.55 per year. And that increase helps to offset any increases in salaries and benefits. And also, we do need to keep up with making sure that we are fully supporting that program in our all-day tuition program. And so we're very close to being self-sustaining, in which we are self-sustaining, but we need to make sure that we continue on that path. And that's the reason for the increase. But as you can see that Burnsville is at $31.32, Edina's at $32.40, Wayzata is at a little over $3,000, Minnetonka's at $3,900, and Bloomington's at $34.65. So we're well below that, even at our $28.35 per year. And I do believe that that helps to draw students to our district who are on the borders of our district to help bring them into our kindergarten program and bring more students to increase our enrollment at that level.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the kindergarten fees as presented?
So moved.
By Tom, second.
Second.
By Stacy. Any questions or comments? Yes, Stacy.
I'm sorry if I missed it. How much is it going up? I mean, this year, is it? Sorry.
So a little over a couple $100.
$200.
It was $26.55 and now it's $28.35.
Okay.
So $175.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Yes. Oh. Okay, next we have policy. We have first readings on several policies, and I guess I'll let you lead us through that discussion.
Absolutely. We have two policies that are regarding transportation of public school students, 707. 708 is the transportation of non-public school students. And Doug Byrne is here tonight to kind of speak to those two and why we put those together. He worked with Jim Delwo in transportation and has some modifications that he's recommended to the policy committee, and we've approved. So it's a first reading. Doug, do you want to speak to the policies?
Good evening. The one policy, I'll give you some background information first. Students across the state can be placed in care and treatment facilities for therapeutic mental health services, and those are general ed or special ed students, either one. And they are placed there by courts or by parents or by physicians, sometimes by the county. And anytime they're placed in a care and treatment center, the resident school district is obligated to provide transportation. That's in Minnesota State Statutes 125A.15. And so there's also, and so that's what we've done in the past. That's what our policy currently reads as, is if a student, most of our students go to YTP, which is Youth Transition Program in Burnsville. We've also transported students to Hopkins, a facility called Delta Place. We've transported students to Fairview Riverside over by the university. And what happens is we will get a notification from these facilities or from a parent saying our student or our child is being placed there, and then we're obligated to line up transportation for that. And so obviously there are more costs involved the further away we are required to transport, and it impacts some districts more so than others depending upon their location. But there is also a stipulation in the Minnesota statute that says the resident district may establish reasonable restrictions on transportation. And so that's what we are proposing tonight, is to include these reasonable restrictions. And what we're looking for is basically to transport the students either to YTP in Burnsville or to Carver Scott, which is starting a new program this year. And that is something that we're proposing to kind of make sure that the costs do not become more excessive than what they already are, so that if parents or facilities contact us, we can tell them that according to school board policy, we will transport to these two areas. Parents can still place their student in another facility, but if they do so, they would be doing so and they would be responsible for transportation. So it doesn't take away that autonomy, but it does let the parents know that if you do so, that's fine as long as you transport your student yourself. And so that's the Reader's Digest version of what we're proposing for the policy change for that specific one. And it again applies to general ed students or special ed students. The last couple of years, we placed about 2 to 3 special ed students per year. Last year, we placed 27 general ed students. So far this year, it's been about 9. And it does seem to fluctuate from year to year.
And the law allows for that flexibility to designate certain facilities that will.
Yep.
Yes.
Can the state, once we set the policy, could the state say you're too restrictive and say you still have to transport to some other facilities? Or is that?
Well, there is one provision in there that the court-ordered placement trumps any policy that we have. So if the court orders a student to be placed in Ramsey County and they live in our district, we would be obligated to do that. But there are other districts that have adopted the wording for this policy. Shakopee has done it, New Prague has done it, Chaska has done it. So it is being implemented in other districts as well.
Stacy, you have a question?
And Doug, I was just going to say, for these students, it's not necessarily the whole balance of the year, or it's just whatever their plan or whatever it calls for. Because it could be 3 days, it could be 3 months.
It could be 3 days, it could be 6 weeks, it could be 3 months. Yeah. Depends on their therapeutic plan.
Yes, Tom.
In creating this, do we have any students currently we're transporting to the other facilities that we would then deem not in the boundaries provided with this new restriction?
Could we?
Do we currently? Are we transporting currently students from those other facilities with the loss then of that capability of their transportation?
Currently, the last school year we transported to Hopkins. In the past, we've transported to Fairview Riverside. Almost all the kids go to YTP or this year beginning Carver Scott. So overwhelming majority, over 90%, go to those facilities. So it would affect fewer kids, but it would help with. And part of the transportation piece is that there's kind of a domino effect. If we send a van to Fairview Riverside, then that van is inaccessible, unavailable for a longer period of time, and it creates a domino effect as far as trying to set up other routes also.
I guess my question is, when we adopt this policy, are we then eliminating certain kids, or do we still have to provide transportation to those other facilities?
We wouldn't have to, no.
We wouldn't have to, okay.
Are you asking if they currently have
transport? Yes.
If they are currently, let's say right now there's a student there and we impose this policy, I'm assuming we would have to continue to do that until that placement is finished, because this policy wasn't in place when they
got it. Okay.
So no one will be adversely affected.
Correct. Under their current placements.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you want to speak to the combining of the two policies and putting the special education disabled students E into this first policy?
That was simply an editing proposal of kind of a cut and paste that we felt there was a better fit in a different part of the policy manual than where it currently was.
Okay. Any other questions on policy 707? Okay. Then we'll move on to 708.
708 was just moving that one chunk over to 707.
Yes, there's no change in the wording at all, it's simply cutting and pasting it.
Just putting it in a better spot.
Yep. It's on the agenda. Get it on for the record. Next, we have 424, probationary teachers.
Yes, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Matt Mons, who is going to talk about this policy and the last one.
All right, and this is a long-standing policy that we've had in the district. The only change to this policy is adding a definition to what probationary status means. Otherwise, there are no changes to this policy as it exists.
Okay. Are there any questions on the changes for policy 424? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to 427.
427, read prior to this, initial compensation adjustment following part year of employment. And Mr. Mons again is going to make a recommendation.
Indeed, so there's a slight title change, and there's also a completely new purpose added there to just make sure that people know what it is they're reading. And the final change in the policy itself is a switch from December 1st to December 31st in terms of when you needed to be employed by the district to receive a subsequent move on a step salary schedule if that exists in your contract. And what this is supposed to, is really, has always signified is that the concept that you needed to have been here for half of a year at least to be eligible for a movement along the salary schedule. And moving that date from December 1st to the 31st more accurately reflects a half a year of employment.
Okay. Any questions on?
Just one.
Yes.
It's a rather short policy. Is there any other policy where it could be embedded, I guess? And
you know, we looked at that not in this round, but 2 years ago, and there really wasn't a good fit for this policy. But you know, but it's not something that we looked at in this round.
Okay.
It's kind of an important topic that seems to need to stand alone.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, these are first readings of these policies. They'll be coming back at the first board meeting in January. If you have any other questions, or please contact the superintendent or Stacy or Lee on the policy committee with your feedback. Next, we have administrative reports. Dr. Gruber.
Yes. Just a few months ago, we recognized a super volunteer, someone that made us very proud to be a Laker. In our Laker pride, Carrie Klima. And we were all saddened to learn that on Friday afternoon that Carrie passed away with her husband, Charlie, and daughter, Mackenzie, and Skylar, her son, with her and her family. Carrie has been instrumental in our district for decades as she has raised her children here through early childhood, family education, through the elementary schools and middle schools, and was a strong advocate for our public school education. And one of the very first people I met here I was so impressed by her commitment to students and to education and to their ability to learn wherever they are, and to make sure that we are providing a rigorous learning experience for our students at all levels. Her legacy will continue on in our schools. She will be dearly missed. Funeral arrangements are public now, and the reveal is tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and then the reveal is tomorrow at 5, and the funeral is Thursday at 3. Is that right? Wednesday at 5, Thursday at 3. More details are in the paper. As a district, we celebrated our 3rd annual data retreat last Monday night with our school board and administrators, and it was a success in helping us see an overview. If you go up 50 feet and look down and look at our successes and challenges that are facing us and continue to face us as we move forward, we had many successes to celebrate, and it was a positive evening. As I reported to our board in my weekly newsletter, I've been named to a state committee by the Commissioner of Education on teacher evaluation. As you know, as part of the legislative session last year, we have been commissioned, the commissioner has been asked to develop a teacher evaluation system with a work group, and I will be one of 3 superintendents serving on that work group beginning tomorrow night, so I'm looking forward to that. We just have one board meeting in December, so this will be our last meeting until January of 2012.
Okay. Any other administrative reports? Okay. Any board reports? Just say that we have building committee scheduled 5 o'clock Wednesday. Lots of fun topics. You know, bring popcorn and, no, I'm just kidding. But, so building committee will be meeting after a couple-month break. Next on upcoming events, we certainly have the winter break coming up. Science Night Live on December 15th at the high school, 7 o'clock. Winter break starting on December 23rd through January 2nd. Classes resuming on the 3rd. And then our next board meeting will be the organizational meeting at 6:30, followed by the regularly scheduled school board meeting at 7. Lee mentioned it at the workshop, and just a reminder that if anybody has requests for committee assignments for next year, to contact either Lee or I with those requests.
Just one other comment
Yes.
on that. At the organizational meeting, I should start, you have a sheet of paper in front of you with a potential proposal for a change in our meeting structure after the first of the year. So at the organizational meeting, if we can talk about that a little bit and maybe firm up what we want our study sessions, if we want to go forward with this plan, what our study sessions would look like, we'd start with that on the 23rd. So just keep that in mind. And again, as Eric said, if you have any thoughts on your committees that you're on or changes you'd like to make or suggestions, if you get to Eric or I, so that when we get to the organizational meeting, we'll have some kind of basis to work from.
Okay. Is there any other business that needs to come before the board this evening? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. By Stacy, second. By Lee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 6-0, and we stand adjourned.